In this video, we will learn about scope of variables in Python.
In this video, the topics we will be covering are what is a scope and what are the different types of scope, and then we will try out a few examples in Python. So first, what is a scope? A scope will tell you till where my variable can be used. Once I have declared a variable, in the same program itself, I can only use a particular variable in some places. In certain places, I cannot use this variable. So this is what is called as scope. Now scope can be of two types. You can have local scope and you can have the global scope. A variable that is defined inside a function is said to have a local scope, and these cannot be accessed outside the function. So when I have a variable that I have defined inside a function, I won't be able to access that variable outside a function. Whereas variables that are defined outside the function body, they are said to have a global scope. So that means I can access these variables anywhere in the program. So this is what local scope and global scope means. Local scope is whenever I have a variable that is inside a function, I won't be able to access it anywhere outside the function. So that means the scope of that variable is local to the function body. Whereas global scope is whenever I have a variable which is defined outside the function, the scope is global, means I can access it whenever I want throughout the entire program. Now let us look at a few examples to understand this better. First, I'll define a function. Inside this function, I'm going to define a variable x which is equal to 5, and then I'm going to define another variable y which is equal to 6, and then I'll print these two variables x and y. After that, outside the function, I'm going to again have a variable x is equal to 7, and then I'm going to call this function and see what the output is. Now you can see the output is x and y, 5 and 6. So what is happening here? I have defined a variable x is equal to 7, and then I'm calling the function here. But what is happening inside the function? Again, there is a variable definition where x is equal to 5 and y is equal to 6. So when I'm printing, this x is getting printed and this y is getting printed. Okay, so this is happening inside the function. Now, what happens when I'm printing the x outside the function? Does this x get printed or does this x get printed? Now, according to our definition of local and global scope, we said that whenever you have a variable that is defined local, which means whenever you have a variable which is defined inside the function body, I won't be able to access it outside. So this x is equal to 5 will not be printed when I'm trying to print x. Rather, I will be printing x is equal to 7 because this is what is the global x. Now, if you see, this is a global x and you can access it anywhere outside the function body. Now, this print x statement is outside the function. So what x will be printed? X is equal to 7 will get printed. Okay, now to understand this more clearly, what if I try to print y? What happens then? Now you see, y is not defined anywhere else outside the function, right? It's only defined inside the function. Y is equal to 6. When I tried printing inside the function, I got the answer x and y 5, 6. But now I'm trying to print y outside the function body. What happens when I try to print a variable that is defined inside the function body outside the function? What happens? I am getting an error saying that y is not defined. This means this y can only be accessed within this function. It cannot be accessed outside. Now let us try another example. Here I will define the function and I will say y is 7. And now I'm going to try printing x and y. Now here, if I have x is equal to 10. By the way, here I'm trying to define it outside the function body, okay? And then I'm calling this function. For what am I doing here? I'm defining a variable x is equal to 10, and then I am calling this function. But inside the function body, I have not defined any x at all. I've only defined y. So what will happen here? Now, x is equal to 10 is a global x, meaning it is defined outside the function body. Now, we learned that anything which is defined outside the function body has a global scope and it can be accessed anywhere in the program. So that means this x is equal to 10 will be accessible here also. So what will be the output for this? It will be x and y, and I'll get 10 and I'll get 7. So we need to be careful with this. Now here x is equal to 10, so that is why it's printing 10 here. Now if there was x is equal to some 13 or something within the function itself, it will print 13 and 7. It will not print 10 and 7. This is because first this function, when it's going to print, it is going to check, is there an x inside this function? Is there an x which is local? If that is not the case, it will check, is there an x which is declared outside the function? Yes, there is an x that is declared outside the function, which is 10. So then it will go and print that x and y. So now you can see x and y is 10 and 7. Now any variable that is available outside the function, I can use it for printing, displaying inside the function. But whenever I want to modify a variable that is defined outside the function, I cannot do it that easily. So I have to work around with some things. Now I'll show you an example. This is a function where I am going to try changing x, and then I will print this x. Now x is equal to 30, and then I'll call the function. So what is happening here? Here I am defining x is equal to 30 outside the function, and then I'm trying to modify this x. Now what will happen here? I will get an error. It says local variable x is referenced before assignment. Basically over here, the reason why it's an error, why I'm getting an error, is because I'm trying to modify something that has not even been defined locally inside this function. So this 30 was defined outside globally. So I cannot go and try change this 30 inside this function. I cannot do that. Now if I had a function and then I had x is equal to 30 inside this function, and then I said x is equal to x plus 10, then if I print x, and then here if I have again x is equal to 30, and then if I call the function, this will work. Because now in this case, what is happening here, x is equal to 30, and here also x is equal to 30, but these are two different x. So this x is a global x and this is a local x. Okay, so these are different x, and whenever you have an x which is defined locally, then you can modify that x inside the function, but you cannot do that with a global x. There is a way to do that with a global x. You have to use the global keyword. So how do we do that? We'll say define function, and then we'll say global x. Then we will say x is equal to x plus 10. Print x. Now here I'll say x is equal to 50, and then I will call the function. So what is happening here? Here I have defined a global x which is 50, and then inside the function I'm using the keyword global x. So this will tell the function that use this global x which I have defined outside, modify this global variable. So whenever I want to modify this global variable, I will use this keyword. Now what will happen? The answer is 60. That means it is working with this same variable. Now if I try to print x outside the function also, I will get the value as 60. Now let us look at an example where for a particular data type, even without using the global keyword, I can modify this data type. So let us look at that. So I'll start with defining a function that is going to take a list. Okay, and what is it doing to this list? It is going to append something to the list. And then what will I finally do? I will print this list 1. So now I'm going to have a list outside the function. So I will call that outside list, and I will say 2 and 6. Now I'm going to call this function and I will pass this outside list. Now what happens here? Outside list is passed into this function. So then here what is happening inside the function? It is appending 5 to list 1, and then it's printing list 1. Now here all of the appending operation is working on a variable called list 1. Whereas in this case, the variable name is outside list. So now if I try printing outside list, so what happens here is that outside list is pointing to a particular location, which is 2 and 6. And then once I'm passing outside list to this function, list 1 also starts pointing to the same location. So when I'm checking the ID of both outside list and list 1, it will be the same. And now when I'm trying to append 5 to list 1, it is like you're appending 5 to outside list as well, because both of them, because at the end of the day, you're actually going to append 5 into that memory location, right? And since both these variables are pointing to the same location, so the output will be the same. So I'll show you what is happening inside. So I'm getting list 1. What I'll do is I'll print list 1 ID, okay, and I'm going to print ID of list 1, and then I'll append 7 to this list, and I'll again print list 1 ID after appending ID of list 1. Now when I have out list, which is equal to 3, 4, and if I print ID of this list, out list, I'll get a value. So I'm getting this 1204956. Now what am I going to do? Inside this function, I'm going to pass this out list. So what happens here? Now you can see once I pass this out list inside this function and I try printing list 1's ID, you can see the ID of list 1 is the same as out list. So that means both of them are pointing to the same location. And after I append 7 also, again I'm trying to print the ID and it's still pointing to the same location. So now when I print out list, I'll get 3, 4 and 7. So here now you can see that I have declared this variable outside, right? I declared this variable outside the function, but I'm able to modify the same variable inside this function as well. So this is only for a case like list. Now I'll show you another example. Here if I take list data type, okay, so this list 1 is a parameter. So I will print the ID of list. Then I will say list 1 equal to 3, 6, 8. Then if I print list 1 ID, then I will say out list equal to 6, 5. And then I'll print ID of out list and I will get 1204926. Okay. Then I will call this function and I'm going to pass out list to this function. So what is happening here? Once I pass this list to this function and I'm printing the list 1 ID, it is the same as what it was for out list. So 12049256, 12049256. But the moment I initialize this list, the ID of this list changes. So now it is no longer the same list. So list 1 is pointing to a different memory location. The out list is pointing to a different memory location. So after this line, if I have any other further lines where I'm performing any operation on list 1, as in if I'm trying to append any element or anything like that, will not be reflected back into out list. Because what happened here was I defined this list 1. Locally, I defined this list 1 with another list. So the memory location of this list changed. So that is why the ID is different. And if I try to make any changes for this list 1, I will not be able to see the same changes in out list. So these are a few things we have to be careful with. If you try a few more examples, you will understand this better. Like this is not something that you will understand clearly in one go. So you have to keep trying more and more examples. So you'll be able to understand this concept better. So thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe.